In the dusty heart of the market square, Bonnie Ruth stood rigid, her hands trembling, not from the chill morning air but from a deeper, unspoken fear. Her faded dress, patched countless times, clung to her slight frame as the crowd's eyes bore into her. She fixed her gaze on the weathered wooden platform beneath her feet, willing herself to disappear into the familiar rhythm of the market, vendors hawking their wares, horses snorting at the hitching posts, coins clinking in hurried transactions. This was supposed to be routine, just another day where she stood silently while Malachi Brooks, her keeper, circled her like a vulture, his voice booming as he listed her skills, her obedience, her worth. She had endured this ritual dozens of times: stand still, say nothing, wait for someone to claim her services for a few months. But today, something was different. A woman in a black shawl pushed through the crowd, her graying hair framing a face etched with desperation. Clarabelle had spent 8 years chasing whispers, scouring markets, clinging to the fragile hope that her daughter, stolen from her in a night of fire and chaos, was still alive. The moment her eyes locked onto Bonnie Ruth's face, time seemed to freeze. Those green eyes, that stubborn chin, the faint scar above the left eyebrow from a childhood tumble, it was her daughter. The world tilted as recognition surged through Clarabelle like a wildfire. This was impossible. This was a miracle. Her daughter, alive, after 8 years of believing her dead. Malachi was mid-sentence, extolling Bonnie Ruth's virtues to potential buyers, when Clarabelle's voice shattered the morning air. "She's my daughter." The words exploded with such force that the market fell silent. Vendors froze, hands outstretched with goods, customers turned, mouths agape, even the horses seemed to pause. Bonnie Ruth's head snapped up, her carefully crafted mask of indifference cracking as she met the woman's gaze. She had no memory of a mother. Malachi had told her that her parents died when she was young, that he had saved her from starvation, that she owed him everything. Yet something stirred deep within her, a faint rattle of a long-locked door. Malachi's face darkened, his hand drifting to the leather whip at his belt, a gesture that made onlookers flinch. He had spent years molding Bonnie Ruth into the perfect servant, a profitable asset he wasn't about to lose to a hysterical woman. But Clarabelle was undeterred, her eyes never leaving her daughter's face as she stepped closer, hands trembling with hope and fear. The crowd's murmurs grew, suspicion and curiosity thickening the air like smoke. Malachi stepped between them, his movements smooth and authoritative. "This girl belongs to me, legally and completely," he declared, producing a worn document from his coat and holding it aloft. "Signed and witnessed 8 years ago when I saved her from death." His voice carried the weight of unchallenged control, but Clarabelle's fury was a force of its own. "You didn't save her," she spat, her voice cracking with emotion. "You stole her. I was there when she disappeared. I searched that burned-out settlement. I knew she wasn't dead because I never found her body." The crowd's whispers grew louder. Sterling Maddox, a local merchant who had seen countless transactions in the square, studied Bonnie Ruth's face with new intensity. Something about her features tugged at his memory, though he couldn't place why. Others began to speak, recalling stories of children vanishing during the chaotic years of territorial conflict. Bonnie Ruth felt a shift inside her, like ice cracking under a warm spring sun. Flickers of memory, yellow curtains, the scent of baking bread, strong arms lifting her to see over a fence, began to surface, dangerous and forbidden. Malachi had taught her that her past was dead, that remembering brought only pain. Malachi's grip tightened on his whip as he sensed the crowd's mood turning. "This woman is disturbed," he bellowed. "Grief has made her see things that aren't there. The girl is mine, and anyone who interferes will answer to me." But Clarabelle ignored his threats, her eyes tracing every detail of Bonnie Ruth's face, the way she held her left shoulder slightly higher, a habit from a childhood injury, the scar above her eyebrow, the green eyes that mirrored her late husband's. Time stretched taut, heavy with 8 years of loss and hope. Then Bonnie Ruth spoke, her voice a hoarse whisper that silenced the square. "I remember yellow curtains." The words were fragile but clear, and Clarabelle's knees nearly buckled. Those curtains had hung in their kitchen, sewn by Clarabelle's own hands. And someone singing while bread was baking, Bonnie Ruth continued, her voice growing steadier. Clarabelle's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Those were details no stranger could know, memories from a life Malachi had tried to erase. Malachi's face paled, then flushed with rage. For 8 years, he had built a wall around Bonnie Ruth's memories, feeding her lies to keep her compliant. Now that wall was crumbling. The crowd pressed closer, sensing something extraordinary. Sterling Maddox stepped forward, his voice firm. "Let the girl speak. If she has memories, let her share them." Bonnie Ruth's hands shook, but she continued, as if a dam had burst. "There was a man with kind eyes who lifted me to see the horses. A woman who braided my hair and told stories about brave princesses." Her eyes locked onto Clarabelle's. "You had a scar on your hand from saving a bird." Clarabelle raised her left hand, revealing a thin white scar. The crowd gasped, whispers erupting into open conversation. This was no longer about legal papers, it was about a daughter recognizing her mother. Malachi's hand moved to the pistol at his hip, and the square's mood shifted from curiosity to danger. The sound of leather against metal sent people scrambling behind carts and barrels. Women clutched their children, men hesitated, hands hovering near their own weapons. Only 4 remained in the center, Malachi, Bonnie Ruth, Clarabelle, and Sterling, who watched with growing unease. Clarabelle stepped closer to her daughter, positioning herself between Bonnie Ruth and the gun. She had searched for 8 years, and no threat would stop her now. Bonnie Ruth's memories flooded back, Malachi's beatings when she spoke of her mother, the days locked in a cellar without food, the lessons that silence was safety. But Clarabelle's presence shattered those lies. This was her mother, the woman who had sung lullabies and braided her hair. Sterling, sensing bloodshed looming, slipped away to fetch the territorial marshal, who was in town that morning. The crowd's murmurs grew as others began to speak. An older man stepped forward, his voice heavy with grief. "My son disappeared 7 years ago. Burned buildings, no body." A woman added, "My niece vanished during the raids. She was 9. The pieces were falling into place, revealing Malachi's pattern of exploiting chaos to steal children. Clarabelle seized the moment. "How many children, Malachi? How many families have you destroyed?" Her voice rang out, fearless despite the gun. Bonnie Ruth realized she wasn't alone, others had suffered as she had, their stories mirroring her own. Hoofbeats thundered as Marshal Hayes and Sterling rode into the square. Malachi's panic spiked, a marshal's scrutiny would unravel his empire of forged documents and stolen lives. His finger tightened on the trigger, but Bonnie Ruth acted first. Fueled by 8 years of suppressed rage, she lunged at Malachi, tackling him to the ground. The gun fired into the air, the crack echoing as they tumbled in the dust. Clarabelle grabbed Malachi's arm, pinning the weapon away from her daughter. Together, mother and daughter fought with a ferocity born of love and survival. Marshal Hayes dismounted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "That's enough." Malachi froze, his gun useless in the dust. Sterling explained the situation, joined by voices from the crowd sharing their own losses. The marshal's anger grew as he pieced together Malachi's crimes. Bonnie Ruth stood, dust-covered but unafraid, as Clarabelle wrapped her in a fierce embrace. Malachi was shackled, his empire crumbling under the weight of truth. Sterling volunteered to aid the marshal's investigation, using his merchant network to spread word of missing children. Riders were dispatched to nearby settlements, carrying hope to families long without answers. Clarabelle and Bonnie Ruth walked away from the square, hand in hand, toward the home Clarabelle had kept ready for 8 years. The market resumed its rhythm, but the story of their reunion would echo across the frontier, inspiring others to speak their truths. Love had triumphed, proving that even in the harshest lands, it could overcome all obstacles.